So, let's talk Kamen Rider. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the very first episode of Break Time with Hobs. Let's go. Woo! By the way, fun fact, this is actually my second attempt at recording the first episode because my first attempt, it was, let's just say, it was bad. I didn't know what I was doing and it just sounds way too monotone. I don't know if that's the right word, but holy shit. It was just, dude, there was just so many like awkward stuff. I don't even know what I was doing with it, but hey, that's what the second take is for. But I was recording the first take. It took me like 30 minutes to record, but I realized that the way I was recording it was just not the right way. So I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just do a second take. Okay, so welcome to Break Time with Hobs. So what's Break Time with Hobs? It is a solo podcast where you guys get to hang out with me while I ramble on about certain topics that I find interesting, that I thought like, yeah, I just want to share with you guys, because, you know, I thought it was cool and I have nothing better to do. I have no friends. Please be my friend. Oh man, so what can I say about Kamen Rider? Well, for starters, it is one of the most influential thing that impacted my life. I mean, it is the reason why I am into superheroes, and it's just my childhood. I just really love Kamen Rider. It is what influenced my love for tokusatsu and superheroes, and I'm pretty sure it is my first exposure to Japanese media. So I have Kamen Rider to thank for that. I'm a weeb because of Kamen Rider. So what is Kamen Rider? So Kamen Rider is this long-running franchise from Japan. It is a tokusatsu genre. So if you don't know what tokusatsu is, just think Power Rangers. I mean, that's what everyone calls Kamen Rider. Like, if no one is ever familiar with the tokusatsu genre or Kamen Rider, they're just gonna be like, oh, it's that Power Rangers from Japan, which is weird because Power Rangers was originally Japanese, so okay. Now, I would say Kamen Rider is very different from Power Rangers, or rather Super Sentai, which is the original source material for Power Rangers to adapt from. In fact, Kamen Rider actually inspired Super Sentai, since the idea was that they wanted to create a show about 5 Kamen Riders color-coded, and that became Super Sentai. And Super Sentai eventually became Power Rangers, so all of this traced back to Kamen Rider. I mean, let's just also add Japanese Spider-Man into the mix, because it's because of Japanese Spider-Man we finally have live-action giant robot action that we're now very familiar with in Power Rangers with the Megazords. So, yeah. But in terms of tone, Kamen Rider is a lot more different, especially like during the first 10 or 15 episodes of the original Kamen Rider in 1971. Now, Kamen Rider has been going on for more than 50 years. In fact, I think it just finished its 50th anniversary back in 2021 or 2022. I really don't remember. And it is a long-running franchise that's just really, really popular in Japan. It is like Marvel or DC level in Japan. But of course, it's not really mainstream, and it's mostly, I feel like the people who are mostly, the community about Kamen Rider, I wouldn't say is niche. It has a decent fan base, and Kamen Rider has like a large fan base around Asia, especially Southeast Asia, Eastern Asia. I would say like in China and other Southeast Asia. I watch Kamen Rider in Thailand, so I know there's like a fan base in Thailand. There's some Kamen Rider dubs here in the Philippines, but I don't think Kamen Rider is that popular in the Philippines, to be honest. I know there are people who watch Kamen Rider, but I don't think there's like any like decent size of a community. Maybe in Manila there is, because I do have Toku fan friends from Manila. So yeah, I haven't really talked about what Kamen Rider is about. So now it's really hard to explain because Kamen Rider has like three different eras, and each of these eras have like its own distinct identity and tone. And the Showa era, which is like from the 1970s to 1980s, has a very consistent tone, which is about a guy who turns into a cyborg bugman, or at least inspired by a bug, to fight an evil organization. In the Heisei era, and by extension the Reiwa era, it is very diverse. We have like battle royales, murder mystery, horror, vampires, hip-hop dancing groups, time travel, destroy multiverse of madness, essentially. There's like a lot of diverse concepts within the Reiwa and Heisei time periods. Now, Kamen Rider started off with a very grim and dark tone because I think I vaguely remember in like the first 10 or 15 episodes, it was pretty dark. There's some like horror elements and shit. And I think this stems from the fact that originally the concept for Kamen Rider is that it was going to be really dark. In fact, it wasn't even called Kamen Rider, it was called Skullman. And it's about some guy wearing a mask to kill his enemies. He's basically the Punisher. And then the higher ups in Toei was like, no, too dark, too grim. We can't show that to kids. You gotta remake this guy. And then that's how Kamen Rider became a thing. But the dark themes and tone still remains. And for those who are curious on why the original Kamen Rider is a grasshopper, well, from what I've heard, insect hunting is really, really popular in Japan. So I guess that's a thing and a key factor. Bugs are just really popular amongst Japanese kids back in the day. I think they are still nowadays, but back in the day they were very popular. So I guess it's also one of the reasons why bug designs are very common in the Kamen Rider franchise. Man, I actually got into Kamen Rider when I was younger, when I was watching it in Thailand on TV. Funny enough, I started off with the Showa era. It's weird because, you know, the funny thing about Kamen Rider fan bases nowadays, the Kamen Rider community, is that they don't really watch the Showa era because it's too old and campy and weird. For me, I had no choice because that was what was shown on TV, and I loved every second of it. It was my very first exposure to Kamen Rider, but I really have no memory on what each of those shows were about because I was just a kid. Now my full deep dive into the Kamen Rider series was back in 2010 when I was watching Kamen Rider Decade, which is the 10th anniversary of the Heisei era, where we meet, well, not really the past versions of not the past writers, but more like alternate universe counterparts of past writers, because, you know, they couldn't bring back the original actor, and I think it's a nice compromise, you know, making it a multiverse story. And even though people didn't like it, I personally enjoy it. I highly recommend watching Kamen Rider Decade for those who are, you know, who are curious to try out the franchise. If you don't know what to pick. I mean, Decade, the plot, it's weird, it's crazy. I would say the first arc is good, like when traveling the alternate 10 worlds. I love those self-contained episodes, which are really good. It's just that episode something, like after the Hibiki arc, everything just went weird because production issues and shit that really don't know where to take didn't know where the direction of the show should be going. So Decade was a mess. Everyone didn't like Decade, but I personally enjoyed it because I get to see awesome crossovers of different writers. And I feel like it's the best way to get a taste of what past series has to offer by watching like the alternate versions of those writers. and see what it's like. And if you're like, oh, if you like the design or if you like the tone of that specific world, then you can try watching the original. And you can try watching the original, and it's more peaker writing. I mean, it's still fun in Decade. Decade is still fun. It's just that the last arc, the cliffhanger, was just really, really bad. Oh, if we're talking about writer shows I dislike, I fucking hate Kamen Rider GO. Kamen Rider GO. It was the 20th anniversary, and some people called it Kamen Rider Decade 2.0. And for some reason, a lot of people liked it more than Decade. But personally, for me, I despise it because the time travel makes no sense. It's very inconsistent. It doesn't know. I really hate the main character. He's just dumb. I want to be king. The motivations and goals for these characters are just straight up weird and inconsistent. I mean, not inconsistent. The only thing inconsistent is the rules and logic of this series, but the only thing remaining consistent is the characters, and that sucks. They don't really have real development until the script says so. Like, oh, the main character has to do this, the main character has to do that. And I don't know. It's just bad for me. But if you want to watch Kamen Rider at its purest form, but you didn't want to watch the Showa era because it's old and campy, then I recommend watching Hideaki Anno's Shin Kamen Rider. Not the 1990-something Shin Kamen Rider prologue, but the 2023 version by Evangelion's Hideaki Anno. It is a remake slash I wouldn't call it a reinvention. I wouldn't want to call it a reimagining, because it felt really close to the original with modern updates and updates. It's Kamen at its purest form, but it's consumable for those in the modern for modern audiences. If you don't like watching like old TV shows, it's good. It's good. I mean, the first arc, the first act of the movie was a bit rushed and unfocused. Second arc, the second act, I would prefer if they had its own movie. Third act was good. I really like the third act of Shin Kamen Rider. It is phenomenal. The only thing I disliked from the third act was the goddamn tunnel fight with the Shocker Riders. It's too dark. I hate it. And it's just mostly full of CGI. Actually, the final fight is also lame. I mean, Kamen Rider Zero's attacks were cool, but then they were just wrestling, and it just looks lame. But yeah, it is a modern adaptation of the original 1971 Kamen Rider, which I don't think I've talked about the story of the original 1971 Kamen Rider series yet. So, a brief summary of what Kamen Rider, at least the original, was about. It's about, a character named Takeshi Hongo. He is a guy with over 300 IQ. He's super athletic, and he's a motorcycle racer. God, I can't English. He's a bike racer, basically. And basically he's peak alpha male, and this evil organization called Shocker, which is a Nazi science cult branch that's based in Japan, and they're like, ooh, we need this man in our ranks. Let's make him into a cyborg, and he'll serve us as our agent. And then Hongo got kidnapped, and he got turned into a cyborg against his will. But before he gets fully brainwashed and joined their side, he escaped and used his newfound powers to fight against the forces of Shocker. Now, the tone, I think I mentioned before, but the tone of the first part of the series was really, really grim and dark by nature, because Hideaki Anno, Shotaro Shinomori, the mangaka author who wrote Kamen Rider, was, I would say he's woke, but not in a modern sense. It's more like, because he's kind of an activist. He's always like writing stories about environmental damage and corruption. It's that kind of woke. Yeah, and then I wouldn't say that the first act of the series was woke. It's more like we're watching over the personal struggles of Hongo overcoming his new nature of not being human. Then after the actor got injured during a stunt that was for the show, he got temporarily replaced by a new main character named Hayato Ichimonji, and with him, he brought a new tone to the series. While by comparison, Hongo was like a grim and glum character. He's depressed and shit. Hayato Ichimonji, our second protagonist, he's a full-on Chad, and he brought a much brighter tone to the series. And he also brought in like two main staples in the Kamen Rider franchise. So originally, whenever Hongo transforms into Kamen Rider, he has to ride a bike and absorb the wind when driving to transform. But for Ichimonji, he invented the Henshin pose and the Henshin phrase, which would become a staple throughout the franchise. And the reason for the reason why they did this instead of the motorcycle transformation is because the actor who plays Ichimonji did not have his motorbike license, so they're like, okay, let's just do this instead, even though his name is Kamen Rider. So with the introduction of Hayato Ichimonji, he became Kamen Rider 2. So Hongo's Kamen Rider 1 and Ichimonji's Kamen Rider 2. And during Ichimonji's run as the protagonist, they basically explain that he was rescued by Hongo off screen, and the reason why Hongo is not on the show because the actor is injured. They basically explain that in the story in the series is that he has to go fight Shocker overseas, so he left Japan in the protection of Hongo. No, not Hongo, in the protection of Ichimonji. So yeah, and my god, that Ichimonji is a fucking Chad. He's easily one of the best characters. And then his brighter tone also affected the entire series, and even Hongo's character even changed up a bit, because when Hongo's actor finally healed his leg, when his leg is finally healed up, he returned to the show, and he finally have his own Henshin pose, and he also have like a much more brighter and more manly and Chad-like personality. So yeah, and then yeah, like so. The first part of the original 1971 story about Hongo was very dark, has a very horror-esque element. Then by the middle section, we have Ichimonji's part as the protagonist, where he brought a much brighter tone to the story. And then he is also fighting alongside allies. It's a lot more campy, I would say. And then in the third half of the remainder of the series, we have both Hongo and Ichimonji together as the protagonists, and together they're known as the Double Riders, and together they just fought Shocker, and by extension Gel Shocker and other evil villains. It's a fun show. It is a fun series. And then it just goes on from there. We have like multiple variations of different Kamen Rider. We had like a Kamen Rider from ancient past. We have Kamen Rider who's basically a fruit samurai. Now me saying this without context just gives you like weird ideas of what these riders look like. It doesn't do them justice, but honestly, I'm honestly planning to have my podcast only like 20 minutes long, and I don't think I have enough time to talk about other series. I would love to, but I feel like I'm boring you guys. But yeah, that's the general gist of what Kamen Rider is about. So yeah, thank you for listening, I guess. But if you guys want to get into Kamen Rider, I guess I would just give like some recommendations. So for the Showa era, watch the original Kamen Rider and watch Kamen Rider Black. Kamen Rider Black is by far the most popular Kamen Rider from the Showa era, and it's by far the most popular in the Philippines. Philippines. Like, whenever I talk about Kamen Rider to my family, they're like, "Oh, we watch Kamen Rider Black and shit." So yeah, so I recommend those two. I would say Kamen Rider Black is by far the most updated. Like, even though it's not as old compared to the other Showa era. I mean, it is old, like it's 80s old, but it has some of the best suit designs and some of the best characters and writing ever. And I guess it was also meant to be as a reimagining of the first Kamen Rider, but then they retconned it to be like part of the main continuity. So yeah, watch in the Showa era, watch the original Kamen Rider or Kamen Rider Black. And for the Heisei era, oh man, there's so much to recommend. For the Heisei era, I recommend watching Kamen Rider Kuga, since it's the start of the era. And for my personal recommendation, I also recommend watching Kamen Rider Decade. And if you want, and I also need to mention that Heisei is split into two phases. So phase 1 and phase 2, they have two different tones. So phase 1, it's very J-drama-esque. It's very drama. It's very grounded. I mean, there are some silly and goofy moments and comedic moments, especially from shows like Den-O, but you're gonna get a lot of J-drama elements, especially from Kamen Rider Kuga and Kamen Rider Agito. So for Heisei, I recommend Kuga, Decade, and I guess Den-O. Den-O is really super popular, especially in Japan. It's like the most popular from the Heisei era. It's a lot more goofy, but it definitely has a lot of heart. But for Heisei Phase 2, the best way I can describe Heisei Phase 2 is it's very anime. And not that it's a bad thing, because it has some really great stories compared to Heisei Phase 1 and some of the best characters. Just expect very eccentric personalities. So for Heisei Phase 2, I recommend Double O's and Forze. I would call them like the unofficial Heisei Phase 2 trilogy shows, even though they're kind of standalone. They had like some connections with each other, even though the stories are pretty standalone. Their only connections are mostly through crossover movies, which they had like shared villains and stuff. It's really good. O's is definitely one of the most popular among the three. Double is definitely iconic. Forze, not as popular as the two, but it's a personal favorite of mine, and I think it's a fun show. And there's a lot to recommend from Heisei Phase 2. I would recommend Kamen Rider Gaim, written by Gen Urobuchi. For those who know who that writer is, it's the same writer. For those who doesn't know, it's the same writer for Madoka Magica and Fate Zero. So if you know anything about Gen Urobuchi, if you know that nickname, if you know why. And that means you know what to expect from Kamen Rider Gaim. It may look silly because of the fruit samurai theme, but holy shit, it's the darkest among Heisei Phase 2. And then for Reiwa, oh man, I don't know what to recommend for Reiwa. I guess since it's the current era for Kamen Rider, just watch whatever you want. Whatever looks interesting, just go ahead. So yeah, that concludes episode 1 of Break Time with Hobs. I hope you enjoy listening to me ramble and fanboy about Kamen Rider. Oh man. So I guess that's it. Thanks for sticking around, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Oh yeah, I think for the next episode of Break Time with Hobs, I think I want to talk about Gundam. Talking about Kamen Rider is such it's already hard enough because of how complex and broad the franchise is. So the fact I'm gonna talk about Gundam next episode it's gonna kill me. Not to mention that this recording right now is the second take because the first take wasn't good. Okay, but I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. Jane. Bye.